Excellent. Thank you for being here today with us to learn more about the college, the UWC movement. Jill Longson, our governor and the chair of the External Relations, is going to talk about more about the UWC movement and what's happening today, as well as what is happening at the college today. Peter Howe, who's your master as well, our principal, he will talk about more about the vision and what are our plans for the future for the college and what we have done so far. Then Steve Thomas, my colleague, the head of finance, is going to talk about how we generate income at the college and how we use the money, how is that spent. And then finally I will talk about what is your role in all this transformation and what can you do to help us transform the college. So I leave you with Jill Longson. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to your reunion weekend. For those of you who didn't meet me last night, my name is Jill, and I'm an AC 81 alum, and I've just recently rejoined the UWC Atlantic board, having been vice chair of UWC International. And I'm really happy to be back and to be working with Peter and the rest of the management group. And I hope what you gather today is a really inspiring message and one that you want to be part of and that you want to engage with. Because there's a lot that's changed at the college in the last couple of years that we are all extremely excited about, and we want to share that with you. I'm just going to give a brief intro, an overview of UWC International, as Andrea said, and then after that I'll hand over to Peter. The mission, of course, of UWC is to make education a force to unite people, nations and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. So this mission was evolved after a lot of conversation in 2005 by the whole of the UWC movement. And I don't know how you feel about it when you read that, but to me it really resonates. It's a powerful mission statement. It's relevant today as it ever was before. And it connects, I think, with a lot of issues that we have around the globe at the moment. The key word in here to me would be education as a force. It's not just education for a process-driven education, it's values-based, which I know Peter will talk about later. Whilst the world is in a much better place today in terms of many metrics that we see, I think we all agree global challenges are as big as they ever have been. Climate change, nearly 70 million refugees, these social fields that we're seeing, and particularly if you look at the UK with Brexit and the social skills and division. So this statement is as relevant as ever. And the piece that I think is really critical as well is the uniting people. And that's of course what we do within UWC. We bring young people together. It was Lester B. Pearson who said, how can there be peace if people don't understand each other? And how can they understand each other if they don't know each other? And in my mind, that is the critical element that makes UWC. Let me just tell you where we are today. We have 18 schools and colleges around the world. And I have to say this reunion is incredibly special for a number of reasons. Why? Because the class of 69, okay, they have their own programs, and none of them are in the room today, but the class of 69 are celebrating their 50th anniversary reunion. They are the most number of the class of 50 anniversary that we've ever seen. And of course it was in their generation that Lord Mountbatten established the UWC movement. So they are effectively the first graduating class of the UWC movement. So everybody here this weekend is part of the UWC movement. And secondly, I would argue more importantly, the first women graduated from 1969, and 6 of them out of 9 of them are back this weekend. So that's many of you might have heard of the growth that's happened very recently, and I'd like just to talk a little bit about that. Obviously the class of 69, one Atlantic College, that was it. The class of 79, I guess you had about 3 new openings in that decade. Class of 89, another 3, 99, another 3, 2009, another 3. So we were very consistent in our growth patterns over the course of those decades. It's this last decade that we've increased by 6. So we've had 6 new colleges established in the last decade. Japan, mainland China, Armenia, Germany, Thailand, and the last one is in Tanzania, The international school in Moshi is just transferring now to become a UWC, and that's our second UWC school in the continent of Africa, so I'm very excited about that. The schools vary hugely in the delivery of the model in the sense of their size. So UWC SEA is the largest international school, one of the largest international schools in the world. It's on 2 campuses, 6,500 students study at UWC SEA. That's obviously the largest UWC school college that we've got, but we've also got the Mostar's, Adriatic, and Costa Rica, which have 200 students, and then we've got everybody in between. So in total, we have around 9,500 students who every single day are studying within UWC. The UWC National Committee system has expanded considerably over the years. Who is involved, or who has been involved in the last 5 years in any shape or form with a national committee? If you just want to put your hands up. Great, and I'm just going to go around the room. I'll go downstairs first. Keep your hands up. Just shout the name of the country that you have been involved with.
Brazil. Colombia. Switzerland. Denmark.
Great, and then upstairs there are a few more of you. Just start from that side and go around. I can't see my hands.
Norway. USA.
Japan.
Germany.
Spain.
Fantastic. I have to say a huge thank you. Huge thank you to all of this family. No, a huge thank you to all of you for everything you do to make the movement so special. It is remarkable the work you do. We have 3,000 volunteers across the movement, and you work tirelessly, and it is a really unique selling point that we have these national committees who of course promote, select and nurture the students before they arrive, and then many run alumni networks. Many of the national committees that have called out today also fundraise for us. We couldn't do without you, and I really want to say a big thank you. And if there's anyone in the room who wants to get involved with national committees, then please come and see me, and I can facilitate that through UWC International. We're also expanding our short courses across the globe, and we've had very many short courses over the course of the period, but that's really increasing. We've just had a very successful couple of courses here, Global Leadership Experience. It's a short dive into UWC land for a couple of weeks, but it's a great way of expanding our impact. And a couple of other points, we have 60,000 alumni now across the UWC movement. If you think about the average age, because we've developed so vastly across the last decade, the average age of our students is decreasing every year. And a few years ago, it was 32 years old was our average age of our alumni, and now that's going down again. So I would argue a huge amount of potential and promise in terms of what our alumni can go on to do. And finally, who's heard of the Harvard Impact Study? Great. How many of you have done it? Fantastic. Everybody else who's not done it, please can you make a commitment to do it? This is massive for the movement. Harvard Graduate School of Education, under Howard Gardner, have agreed to do a longitudinal study of the whole of UWC movement and the impact that it's making. We need at least a third of that 60,000 to do the study. It's half an hour, it's really interesting, and I'd love AC to have one of the highest participation rates because that will show us a lot on numerous different levels in terms of the difference that we've made. So please, 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 can you fill that in over the next few weeks? And then let me just move, this is my last slide before I hand over to Peter. Let me just talk about Atlantic today. We have in total nearly 360 students over the 2 years. We did have a pre-IB, we've dropped that now, and from about 92 countries. Our scholarship provision was very low, and we have been gradually increasing it, and this year particularly we've seen a really good increase. But we want to get it back up to 50% very quickly, and then our aim is to get it back up to 75% very quickly after that. This is really important because this drives the deliberate diversity of the student body, which is at the core of the UWC movement's educational model. So we've got to up that, and I know Andrea will be talking to see if we can get your support later on. All students are means tested, all parents are means tested. I think that's an important message. A few years ago that wasn't the case, but now every single students come in, whether they're from Afghanistan to Australia to wherever, they are all means tested. So the money that people give is stretched further. We're one of the biggest employers in South of Wales with 150 members of staff. and they all they do a great job, and our appreciation is for them as well, led by Peter. I just want to cover out now the change that I've really seen under Peter's leadership, which is regarding student trust, responsibility and autonomy. A few years ago, you may have heard some quite bad stuff coming out about how we were trying to manage students in a very different way. Under Peter's leadership, the trust, responsibility and autonomy piece is massive. And I just want to give you 3 examples of what that looks like in today's Atlantic College. Firstly, we have student councils. We've got 5 of them, they're all elected, they all elect each other. We have a student council, which is sort of the overarching body, and they have a more general remit across the college. And then we've also got Peace Council, Student Council, Wellbeing Council, and this wonderful acronym called SLAC, which is Student Life at Atlantic College. For those of you who are in Kaboko, that's about the equivalent of what that was. So they basically run the social side of the college. The inspiring piece here for me is that the 2 joint chairs of the Student Council are on the board, and they bring so much to our board meetings. It's fantastic. The last 2 who just graduated now, Anki and Cheryl, are 2 Black African women from Kenya and Nigeria. They just left, and they're being replaced by 2 other women from South Korea and Italy. They're all elected, and their level of maturity and the involvement that they have is super amazing. So I wanted to share that with you because I think that's a very important dynamic. The other thing is conferences. The students they determine which conferences we have, they run them, they lead them, they manage them, they participate in them in a scale that I think doesn't happen in other colleges. There's a conference board, and the students have to apply for through their application process. We had 9 last year apply. Whole range, and the student conference board determine which 4 are chosen for the following year. So last year we had a sub-conti conference, a feminist conference and a STEM conference, but next year we might get something completely different. And that's when the students take a couple of days out of their normal IB program, and they really launch into the specific areas of topics of the world that they want to deep dive on. What's interesting is we had somebody come to say, gosh, your teachers are really young. They went into a workshop and wow, they're so young. And we were like, no, those aren't teachers, those are students who are delivering those messages and who are running those workshops. So it's fabulous to see that in action. And as far as project weeks are concerned, we went in the past down a sort of not so mission aligned and not so close to home policy on project weeks. We've completely reversed that now. So all the project weeks that we have, hugely mission aligned and very close to home, so that as we put up there, a college of Wales, not just in Wales, so we can really have far more of an impact in terms of our project week experiences, which we think is very important. Peter will talk a little bit now about the curriculum innovation, and this is hugely exciting. If you think about it, we all did the IB in those decades going back. The IB today hasn't changed very much at all, and Peter will talk about how we want to be at the forefront of a change in the IB. We've appointed a new director of learning innovation. We've also got what we're calling the Land and Sea Stewardship Programme, which again Peter will allude to. And we had a marvellous co-production series of meetings last year by 1969 graduate Ruth Deneen, and a lot of initiatives have come out of that, including the Lighthouse project, which I think you'll talk to Peter later on. But very exciting stuff that's coming out, working in conjunction with the staff and the students together to really see how we can live the mission while we're at the college through these initiatives. And finally, as I said before, we've got this network of untapped alumni. We know we've done not a very good job of engaging in the past with alumni. I think through Andrea's appointment and Magda, who many of you have met, we are up for changing this big time and reasonably soon. It was at the core of the UWC strategy was 3 pillars: seek, educate and inspire, and it's the inspire piece that we've not done well before. So you'll see a lot more initiatives where we really want to use you. We want to use your time, your talent, your treasure, and we want to use you in terms of building and helping support the college in many, many different ways. You know, if you're great at giving lectures and you have a specific leaning or a specific skill set and you want to come and give lectures or part of the conferences, that's the sort of thing we need to work harder on. We will have a mentoring program launched in the fall. We think that's a very important way that you can get involved as well. If after this session you want to participate in that conversation, Andrea and I will be leading on in the Ideas Hub on Alumni Engagement. But that's the next piece, if you like, that's the next bit that we'll be focusing on. That's an intro from me. I'll pass you over to Peter and he'll carry on. Sorry, I took a little bit longer probably. And thank you all very much for your attention. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I presume many of you had late nights, and even though we keep pushing the time later and later for this session, it's still tough to get up in the morning, and especially on such a beautiful day, so thank you for coming. I did introductions of myself to the various reunion years last night, but just to remind everyone, because I don't remember what I say most of the time, part of this presentation is to rein me in. I just like to ramble about what we're doing, but they are controlling me with PowerPoint, so I will try and refer to what's on the screen at some point. But I think, for me, it's important for you to know that I joined the UWC movement just as you did as students. When I found out about UWC in 2001 doing work with the IB, I thought it was too good to be true. I was also deeply disturbed that I had never heard about UWC growing up in Canada, and yet Pearson was founded in '74. So theoretically, I should have been eligible to go. I don't think I would have gotten in. But I literally wrote to the heads of all the UWCs back in 2001 for 4 years, trying to get my foot in the door at UWC. So sort of like the candidate who gets rejected the first time around and applies the next year. And to be honest, the only person who replied to me in my first efforts was David Sutcliffe, who some of you may know. And at that point, David was working on a project in Mostar, which is now the UWC in Mostar, which began as a project of UWC Adriatic. And he wrote a really encouraging note, just saying, sorry, Mostar's delayed right now, but you're just the type of person that we would want to work at a UWC. So that sort of kept me inspired to get on with the job. Finally got my foot in the door at UWC Adriatic in 2005. And sort of last person standing ended up being Il Magnifico Lettore there, which is the greatest title I've ever had, 3 years later. And the reason I tell that story in particular is it was a board decision. Sorry, Jill, being on board. Boards are problematic things generally in schools. So this brilliant board took the decision on the 29th of August, so we're in session, of sacking the head and the chair of the board because they were in this sort of death spiral together. They were arguing about very trivial things. So they said, okay, both of you go. We'll make the vice rettore, which was what I was at the time. We'll make him the head, and we'll get someone else to be chair of the board. Well, the problem was Adriatic actually doesn't have 200. It has 185 students. So the leadership structure was the head and the deputy head. And my wife and I were also house parents. I was teaching, so it's like, okay, how am I going to do this job? Because I can't go out and recruit, a deputy head. I didn't have anyone really with a lot of experience on my staff. So I turned to the students. I called an assembly of the second year, said, this is what's happened. I really need your support. I can't do it alone. And from that moment on, that has been my approach to running a UWC. So when I moved to Maastricht with my family in 2012 to take on the headship there, and that was a new UWC, it was a conversion of an international school. Very interesting idea, how do you make a UWC out of an international school? It's a great learning experience. But I turned to the residential national committee students, which at the time were 100 out of 600 students, say, okay, I need your help to transform this into a UWC. So a lot of the ideas that came out of that, I was able to bring here when I came in 2017. And to be honest, as Jill alluded to, I was absolutely shocked at the lack of trust that we had in students. So as I spoke to some people last night, they were doing random breathalyzers every night at check-in. They had a pub ban, they had an alcohol ban, they put alarms on the doors, so after check-in you were locked in. They put window restrictors on the windows. So it was like all of these signal distrust. And if you don't begin from a position of trust with UWC students and authentic responsibility, which is Han's brilliance, authentic means you allow them to fail. You don't rescue. You want to organize a conference? Great. And if it's terrible, it will be terrible, and you will learn from that as well. So I lifted the pub ban, and that was a really delicate one. Because well, first I stopped the random breathalyzer, but I didn't want, because populist leadership is very trendy these days. I did not want, this woohoo, the new popular head, where my colleagues, in good faith had put these systems in because they felt the place was out of control. So it was a balance, but what I said to the students was, you need to show up, because what was happening was attendance was terrible. There was 30% absentee rates. No one was going to the conferences, which the faculty were organizing, and there was one at the end of that week. And I said, you will demonstrate to me your commitment to this new way of working, you will show up. That's the first thing. 90% of it is showing up, and the other 10%. But I am lifting the pub then, by the way. And thankfully, they didn't do the woo-hoo, they just good, serious students. They're secretly, high-fiving under the table or whatever. But what was incredibly rewarding, just as it had been at Adriatic, was that Friday when the conference started, which was in Bradenstow, and they set up the chairs, etc., it was still overflowing. The students, voted with their feet. Yeah, we want that responsibility. We want to take it on. So that's what we've really been working on, is how do we give students trust and authentic responsibility, but at the same time hold them accountable. And something else that had sort of diminished was the tutor system, that because they professionalized house parenting, so house parents were no longer teachers, it's like, well, I'm not involved in pastoral care anymore as a teacher. It's like, that doesn't work for me. Every teacher has to be, get to the slide. Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Well, I haven't actually talked about anyone's here, so I can I'll keep storytelling. No, so we've restored the tutor system, we've returned to teacher house parents, all of these things that were at the heart of UWC Atlantic from the beginning, we're bringing back. This is what we refer to as UWC time. I noticed that the group followed Manfred Schnippers, who's the governor of the school. So it's like, if you come with the governor, you can show up whenever you want. So just to explain the first slide that I'm supposed to speak to, these are the givens for me. This is what I'm assuming. I absolutely believe in the mission and values of UWC. That's what attracted me, as someone who heard about the movement and how they approach education. Students must be selected on promise and demonstrated potential. So we moved away from the word, probably about a decade ago, of merit, because often merit is based on opportunity. And so if you speak 5 languages and you play the violin and all those things, that's often evidence of opportunity. And we wanted to make sure that students who come from more disadvantaged backgrounds were considered at the same level. So what we tell national committees is making the most of the opportunities you've had. So if you grow up in a refugee camp, how have you demonstrated in your life and how you manage yourself that you have that potential that needs to be tapped into and cultivated. Obviously everyone has potential, but UWC selections have to be rigorous and promise potential based. of values-driven education. And this drives the students nuts, which is one of the reasons I love saying values-based education. It's not about a rule book. What the students want to know is, if I do X, what happens? And if I do X twice, what happens? And if I do X 3 times, what happens? And my answer to them is always, there will be a conversation. Because we're a values-based organization, the example I often give is, if you're out of curfew, and you're out of curfew because your best friend just lost a family member, I'm going to commend you for making that decision. If it's because you're watching Netflix, you know, I'm not going to be so happy about it. So I think we need to work to understand why students aren't meeting expectations. I mean, we had an example this past year with a student who was abusing alcohol, and what came out when the conversations took place, and because of her trust in the people having those conversations, was that she had been sexually assaulted a number of years ago. And this was her coping mechanism. You know, so we were able to get her the support she needed, and the drinking went away. You know, but if we had just, hey, you were caught, you know, drunk, this is the sanction, we would never have found out about that. So I think it's really important that we emphasize, yes, Alec? Yeah? And then the piece that Jill alluded to, we assume that we are delivering through our alumni a positive impact on some of the world's biggest challenges. We have sort of stories about that. That's a big part of what the Harvard Impact Study is about. And it's not that, you know, everyone has to be a world leader. It's that the education you had here is influencing the way you lead your life, the way you raise your family, the way you contribute to your community, big and small. Because for me, the magic of UWC is hopefully during the 2 years here, you come to understand the power of community. And you understand the power of diversity. And that to get anything done, you're going to have to get people to be working with you. So what do you do wherever you go, whether it's university, the company you work for, etc., is that you look for people you can work with to make the world better, whether the world is small or big. So start local, go global. So student life, for me, the students have to be at the heart of everything we do. So early on in my tenure, a veteran faculty came to me and said, you know, love the community idea, you know, yeah, I absolutely agree with you, it's about community. But the community that you need to be working on is the adult community, the students are transient. And I fundamentally disagree with that. We have to feel as if the students are always at the center, and it's why we do what we do. It's not to create sort of a nice lifestyle for ourselves, although it is a nice lifestyle, frankly, I think, to be challenged and engaged with young people from around the world who are so passionate about everything they do, that we have to put the students at the center. Trust, authentic responsibility, autonomy, and accountability. The autonomy piece is important for me as well. We're not a surveillance school. You know, I had a parent actually withdraw their kid this year, British parent, and they complained that there was a lack of supervision between midnight and 7 a.m. You know, and how do you know what they're up to? And it's like, well, I don't. But I trust, for the most part, they'll be making good decisions. Place-based. As you know, and as you're experiencing this weekend, you walk onto this campus and it's magical. And whatever your faith or religion or belief system, you can't help but feel the magic of this campus, and we need to take advantage of that. I've had the privilege of going to virtually all the UWCs. I haven't been to Thailand or Diligent in Armenia, and this is the most incredible campus in the UWC movement. Italy was pretty nice. The weather was a bit better. But, you know, we have the farm, we have the seafront, we have the valley, we have the castle. It is a magical place, and everyone who spends time here feels that. So we can't confine ourselves to the academic block. We have to re-engage with our physical space. I've always believed that what takes place outside the classroom is as important or more important than what takes place inside the classroom. I'm sure you all believe that as well. Your memories are not built, although maybe they were in Alice in chemistry class. You generally will not remember a particular lesson, you'll remember an experience. That's why experiential education is so powerful. That's where learning takes place, that's where it's grounded. So we have to make sure that we're a progressive, experiential educational institution. And I think at some point along the way, and this is not just AC, it's the UWC movement, we lost sight of how important innovation is in education. When this college began, it was described as the most radical experiment in education since the Second World War. But at some point, it became all about opportunity. It became about scholarships. It's about getting kids who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to have this wonderful education. That's still a noble cause. But if we're not trying to be innovative and radical in education, then frankly, I don't think we're going to be viable as a movement. And that's why I support the growth, but I think we don't want to get too big. Because with each additional school and college, that's another restriction in terms of, we want to be the speedboat of education, not the ocean liner, in terms of our ability to change direction. So that's why we're investing in this directive learning innovation. We want to lead the movement in reimagining education and the IB in particular. And then student well-being. I must say that when I started at UWC Adriatic, and we had, I think, just over 20 teaching staff and maybe the same number of support staff, very bare bones. I felt that UWC, particularly going after vulnerable community students like refugees or those coming from conflict zones, that we were tightrope walking without a net. We were putting students into incredibly demanding situations and expecting them to thrive, but not providing any support systems for those students. And I had the privilege at last week of a very generous donor who gave me €500,000 to start a counselor program and to get a psychologist to lead on our student well-being. And it transformed the school. We got an English language learning support person, a digital learning needs person, etc. So when I came here to the college, that's where I felt our first investment should be. So we now have 2 psychologists. We created something in the CASA called the Learning Center, TLC, where we have an English language learning specialist and a digital learning needs specialist, the 2 psychologists. So it's about support. It's not about mental health support necessarily or language or learning. It's that you go there to work if you want. There's really nice student workspaces, but you can have an informal conversation with one of these people to ask for help. Because asking for help actually is a real skill to be developed as well. And culturally, a lot of our students have never experienced a situation where they could ask for help. So we run a pre-induction course now for students with weak English, so they come 2 weeks early and they have intensive English. But more importantly, they come to know the campus and the surrounding area. Because inevitably, students today who don't have English come from disadvantaged backgrounds, almost exclusively. So to get that sense of belonging, because even though the welcome that students get when they come with pots banging and face paint and loud music seems a lot of fun for the second years, for a lot of these first years who have never been on a plane before or never left the home country, it's incredibly intimidating. And for me, one of the most interesting things is how that group of 15 students greet each other when they arrive. It's quite formal. They often arrive in their best clothes, and they will shake hands with each other, and go down the line. Versus the Yahoo party on that is the traditional welcome. So even that helps them be a bit more grounded. How to use the laundry. Some of them have not been exposed to these technologies before. So that's been a really great addition that we have. And then my final slide, what we're calling vision to action. It's great to talk about all these things, but what are you doing? And as I hope you've come to understand, we have implemented a lot of things already. But basically, I spent my first 18 months listening, reaching out to alumni, but to current students as well, to give them that voice to staff, to find out what they also imagine for the future. So we are focusing on what we call people, purpose, and place. You might come to understand that we actually appointed someone for communications finally around here, so we're starting to get our language down on these things. But as Jill alluded to, relative to the UWC movement, especially the colleges, we have the lowest scholarship provision of any college. The new colleges cannot generate more than 25% of their income from parental contributions or national committee contributions. We're really proud of the fact that we're now up to 42% funded by philanthropy, but that means 58% is funded through national committee or parental contributions. Building trust or restoring trust with national committees. As the person outside of AC for the first 12 years, I came to understand quite profoundly that the national committees had a big hate on for Atlantic College because of the way they managed direct entry. They often took students who were rejected by national committees, who then showed up at AC with the checkbook in hand and said, do you have a place? And they were told, yeah, we have a place if you have the ability to pay. And one of the great privileges of being head at Adriatic is, throughout its history, it's supported selections in the Balkans. So I've been involved in founding the National Committee in Kosovo. I participated in selections in Serbia, in Greece, in Turkey, etc. So I had a pretty good reputation with the National Committee. So coming here, I wanted to signal, we're going to work with you, national committees. So one of the reasons I ended the pre-diploma program, which was a year before the IB for 15-year-olds, was it was perceived by national committees, particularly European national committees, as a way to get students in as fee payers without going through the national committee. It was sold as for students who needed an extra year, to be ready to take on the IB, but they were all fee payers. They all had strong English. They did the IGCSEs, for those of you who know that program, in a year, which is double the intensity. So if you were academically able, relatively fluent in English, and had an ability to pay, you weren't going to be doing the pre-diploma program. So ending that for me was symbolic. But it also, what had not been taken into account is if you have under 16-year-olds on campus in the UK, the provision of care is completely different. The reason we have 24/7 security was because we had under 16s on campus. The reason there's a fence around the outdoor pool is because we had under 16s on campus. You couldn't leave them unsupervised. So if a class had to be canceled because the teacher was sick, you had to have someone cover the class. There were all these unanticipated consequences of that. And they were 20 students out of 380, so they were always forgotten about. They were down at the barracks. So it's like, oh, what are we going to do with the pre-diplomas? This was sort of the question, even though it was 3 years into the program when I arrived, it was being asked. So we ended that. This year, 2019, we've also ended direct entry. So something that the national committees are running this year is something called the Global Selection Program. So that's students who either aren't eligible for national committee selections or the families want to know earlier in the year whether they have a place of UWC can go through the Global Selection Program. No scholarship provision is provided through that program, so it is for fee-paying students, and all our scholarship money goes towards national committee nominated students. I've already spoken about investing in student well-being. Improved commerciality and efficiency programs to reduce costs, Steve will talk about, but we do have this glorious campus, which has been underutilized in the summer. So in addition to mission-aligned short courses, it's also commercialized short courses. Summer programs for students 14 to 16-year-old is a growing global market, and we have a great product in terms of our outdoor education provision, the mission-aligned things we do in terms of teaching, so we can run summer courses here that will generate income for the college. Engaging with alumni. Now I think the brilliance, Jill, sort of downplayed her vice chair role, but she was also the lead author on the UWC International Strategic Plan, and I think the brilliance of that plan was recognizing that alumni have huge untapped potential. And the number one complaint of alumni is we only are interested in you when we want money, and we come and ask you for money. So what I certainly recognize is your ideas are actually probably far more valuable than your money, although the money's nice too. And that's why for reunions now, we're running these ideas hubs to literally try and get your ideas about the new curriculum or well-being or alumni engagement, etc. Because AC has 9,000 alumni. We're not in touch with a lot of those alumni. We're not engaged with a lot of those alumni. So we're making a real commitment to alumni engagement, and Magda, who Jill mentioned, who's working with Andrea in London, has been tasked with creating some sort of mentorship program. But even that word I'm not sure is right. You know, because it's not just about, well, I want to work in banking, how do I get a job, can you help me? I think a word like stewardship or curation, this Lighthouse project that was alluded to was a student initiative where they wanted to engage more with alumni to get alumni to support them in their social projects. So they want to do things. I mean, that is the other thing about UWC students. It's not like when you grow up, you'll do things. They arrive here wanting to make a difference in the world. And the first world they're making a difference is the college. But they want to do things, but they don't have the skill set. Like, I need video editing expertise, or I need copyright expertise. And they want to have access to the alumni network so they can ask alumni how to do that or to help them out with those skills. So the idea of the Lighthouse is a creation space. We'll put them down by the seafront. They're going to have their computers and everything else, but they're also going to have access to the alumni network so that they can make things happen while they're here. So ideally, they might take a gap year and see if the social enterprise they're thinking of is viable, but to get things working. You know, last week we developed a social entrepreneurship curriculum that we had all the students take. And the Land at Sea Stewardship, which those of you who come to the education piece and make these up, in the balcony, an AC 2011 alum who's leading this project, is about using our resource, the campus, in a new curriculum. Because I didn't feel AC had any skin in the game in terms of UWC development. We had our social entrepreneurship at Maastricht, Mahindra had their project-based learning, SEA had their complexity thinking modules. What had we done lately? We had a great historic heritage that was wonderful. We invented the IB, we invented UWC, but what are we doing now to challenge new curriculum? So that's why we started this project, so that we had a place at the table. Establishing the Center for Innovation. So the idea is that teacher training is a huge opportunity for UWC. And so we want to convert the barracks to a center of innovation so we can run outreach programs as they did in the old days, because that had become the free diploma residence, so we didn't do residential outreach anymore. We want to go back to those roots. But we also want to develop teacher training at the college. So that's the idea behind the Center for Innovation. Building our outreach program and communications I've alluded to. And then finally, Andrea's department, as many of you know, Tulare has retired. She'll be coming to the dinner tonight, so we'll be able to celebrate her incredible contribution over the past decade. So we've reimagined development, not just about fundraising, but actually about partnerships and engagement as well. So that's why we've renamed it Philanthropy, Partnership, and Engagement, and Andrea will speak to that after Steve. So I hand it over to Steve. We'll be happy to do Q&A at the end. Thank you.
So I'm briefly going to talk about our finances. One thing we're really keen to do as a college is involve everyone and educate everyone as to what our finances look like. So this is something that we share with the students, we share with our staff members, and we share with the unions and other gatherings. We feel it's important because there's... Yes. Sorry. The Welsh accent doesn't work with microphones. So we feel it's important that we're transparent with our budgets, that we share and then people know what we're facing as financial challenges, and also that some of the misconceptions around there's lots of money in this college, it's an independent school that charges a lot of things, there's lots of money. So just to try and allay those myths and also to bring people along on the journey, because our students, our staff have great ideas, they can also help us in improving and managing these situations. So, our income first, this is where we get our money. So we get, for the 1920 financial year, we have a budget of 10.9 million. So that's made up largely of IB fees, the IB fees being 10.3 million of that. The good news, and my favourite part of this chart, on the left-hand side, the more colourful side, this is our scholarship and financial support. So as Peter mentioned, we now provide of our income, 42% of that is scholarship places. So that's improved 4.5% on the year before. So again, great increase, and we've got ambition to increase it year on year, so 50% and beyond. Running through that quickly, so of the 4.3 million, 42% of scholarship income, 1.6 million of that is sourced by our development team. 1.2 million of that comes to our national communities. So where those national communities actually find sponsors or support or fundraise for that. And then we've got IO sources. So these are things like the Horizon and the other foundations that link into the international office and are shared across the UWC schools and colleges. And then this next bit is where AEC has funds or finds funds for students as well. So we've got endowments, we've got certain investments, so we've got certain long-standing restricted funds from donors that we're able to apply to students as well. So one key bit on this, and for the keen auditors or the keen finance people amongst you, 4.3 plus 6.4 does not equal 10.3. So we thought it was really important you know the full extent of the financial support we give to our students. So that little lilac box there, which is the unfunded bit, £400,000 college money goes to student places as well. So we don't raise money for every penny of every student we get, so the college has to support £400,000. So just to show the true scholarship picture, we have that in. So hence the intentional fiddle, it's an honest fiddle. And then onto the other side, so the parental income. So this is where the fees are paid by parents. And they come from different sources. So it comes the parents whose children and students are recruited through the national community process and then pay the college. So that's the 3.4 million. You've got the AC source students. So Peter mentioned the direct entry. These are the students that were previously sourced by Atlantic College. And again, a big positive for us. That line will be there next year or the year after. Because the GSP program is now in place, another route for people to apply and go through the same level of scrutiny and challenge as the national community process, but also hoping then that NC source, but in particular the NC scholarship and the scholarship sections, change, so more and more of our students come through the national communities as time progresses. So that's our core income. Our 2-year program is where we get most of our income. And then we look at the other income. So 600,000 comes from other things, primarily commercial. We've also got a little bit of rent that comes from the houses we get on site and things like that, but primarily commercial income. This is where we really need to grow. So we do weddings at the castle. They're really quite profitable. They contribute a lot of money. So we need to make the most of this beautiful estate. It's a prime venue for that. The key is to do that whilst not interrupting the student experience. And we think we've done that quite successfully. Lots of our weddings are in the summer or on weekends when the castle isn't really used. So. The other thing, as Peter alluded to, short courses. That's a real focus for us. So if we can get our summer courses and our summer programs, the mission aligned ones and also the commercial ones, to really take off and make use of this campus throughout the summer. So let's see the dormitories for the summer months. That will really increase that line as well and really help us going forward. And the reason we need to increase that line is the next slide. So 10.9 million income. That sounds like we're going to have some money spare after it. But looking at where our costs go. So 52% of our money straight away to staff costs. So that sounds huge. That's pretty good for the independent school sector. Pretty good in education in general. One little thing I'd like to emphasise with that is 52% of too much. Our cost base is big. We've got a big estate to maintain. We're actually quite an expensive place in terms of education. So 52% of too much. So we're making efficiencies there. We're streamlining structures. We're streamlining the way we work there. But then it gets on to the other stuff. And this is slowly building a picture of where our money goes, but actually eroding any free money we've got, and certainly discretionary spend. So there's not a huge amount of money we could save. So we could, with all our efficiency programs, we're trying our best to get as much efficiency and basically savings out of what we've got at the moment. But looking where our money goes, it's all slowly disappearing as you eat your way through this pie. So catering, nearly £1 million. Huge, that's nearly 10% of our income. And then we get the estate's costs. So add in depreciation, which is largely the equivalent of the replacement cycle for our assets and buildings, etc. You've got utilities, the other estate's running costs. Add to that the chunk of the staff costs that are our estates and property repairs team. we've got 25% of our income goes straight away after beginner's place lending. That's huge. That's very big in education terms, it's very big in any estate terms, in any business terms. So we slowly eat away at that 10.9 million and we get to the surplus, the little purple sites at the bottom. So that's £250,000 of effectively not free cash, but money left over after running the college for the year. The thing and the important message here is you've all seen the estate, you've seen the residences, you've seen the castle. We've got some huge bills if we want to improve this campus and make it the place to educate that we really want it to be. So £250,000 a year isn't going to pay for new student residents. It isn't going to do any major capital development. It's just not going to spread water and keep this place maintained. So that's where, and I think the perfect time to hand over to Andrea, we then rely on the philanthropy and the other elements to help us keep this place improving and to live up to the ambition that we're trying to do.
Thank you. I think we have talked about the movement, we have talked about the college, and I want now to talk about you, the power of the alumni network. As Jill said, there are 9,000 alumni from AC, and I think that's really powerful, and there's a lot of untapped potential. And that's one of the reasons that brought me here. I was working at Kew Gardens, and I had a very comfortable position, and one of your trustees really engaged me, and I saw the leadership that we have now, and I saw the potential of this network and the capacity that you have to do amazing things, so I decided to come here and work with the college. As I see my position and the position of our team as enablers, we want to help you to connect and to do amazing things, not only for the college, but for the movement. So we're trying to create new opportunities for you to connect, to engage, that are interesting, and it's not about only asking you for money. So we have launched this June the first Alumni Project Week. We are, for the first time doing this Ideas Hub, so I hope to see you, many of you, taking part in this interactive working lunch after this session. And we are going as well to launch a program, as Jill mentioned, called mentorship. Maybe we need to change the name, as Peter said. It's basically, I just realized by talking to many alumni since I joined, that the network is really connected by class, so you know the people above you and below you, but you don't know the people 10 years below you. So I think that can be very powerful if you could all be connected on a vertical line and help each other. Not only professionally, but also to make a social impact, which is part of the mission. So I really want to make a plea to all of you to really engage and give us your time, your treasure, and your talent, and really keep tuned, keep engaged, and we will launch all of these engagement opportunities this autumn, so we'll learn more about them. And I really would like to see all of you taking part in that. The last point that I want to make is obviously treasure is very important for the college, for all the ambitious plans that we have. And we're trying to make your life easier to help you to give back. We changed our donations page, I hope you have seen it. Also, we're changing the web page, so it's going to be more exciting. We're changing the way we're communicating with you, so you're excited about what we're doing. And also, we launched three new programs. So there are 3 ways in which you can give. One is the Atlantic Fund, and those are the different areas where you can support. So it's not only about scholarships, because we want to do many other things. So it's about sustainability, it's about capital projects. So there are different areas that you can direct your support to. We have a new patron program, the Atlantic Circle. You might have seen this brochure in your goodie bag, so please have a look. And then also we have a major donor program called the Court Hand Circle. So I look forward to working with you, and thank you again. Questions and answers. If you have any questions for any of us, please go ahead.
you want to stand up and introduce yourself before you start, that'd be great.
Hi, so I'm Nick Denson. I'm Nick's a local because I'm a odd year. I'm a 78, not a 79, but but what I wanted to ask is, from the scholarship fund, how much of that is actually raised through student donation, ex-student donation? And what's the participation rate? Because I think those are important numbers for us to reflect on. You know, we can give time, we can give commitment, we can mentor, but at the end of the day, we also need to try and give back some of our scholarship costs for years past. And if everybody could contribute at a rate that was amenable to them, that would be great. It would be good if we can have 100% participation. Probably unachievable for everybody, but it'd be nice to try to strive for that as an aspirational goal.
Do you have those numbers in terms of?
Yes, in terms of the participation is quite low. It's around 15%. So we really want to engage you. You know, it's just, I think it's too low. It's not about the money. If you can even give £1 on a regular basis, that would be amazing. If you could come and give a lecture on Friday, that would be amazing. So it's just taking part in it. It would be very important for the college. And in terms of the funds, I really want to answer the question. How much is from alumni? It's a mixture because we have the it was 1.6 million pounds. You have around 40% trust and foundations, 40% major donors, and the rest is the annual fund.
I just want to add to what Nick has said. I'm Kirsten Baumgart from the class of 79. He's not such an introvert, but he's married to our 70. It's, as an American, you know that fundraising is a whole career. And it's very, very important to have participation in order to get matching from philanthropic organizations. And so if we were to give even $25 or pounds or whatever you have, hopefully euros, it shows the participation rate greatly increases the ability to the college to get those matching funds from any philanthropic organization. So I think that has to be going on.
I'm so glad you've both said what you've said, and we haven't planted the either. You are absolutely, and that would have been my response, is in terms of gearing up our donor capacity, looking outside of the UWC Atlantic movement for people who could give. If we have a low participation rate, they're not really going to be very interested. So really, when you go home, and I think the other important thing is, don't think about giving once, think about giving regularly. What you can actually give regularly is way, way, way more important, because then we know we can see the money coming in. So what Andrea alluded to in terms of the Atlantic Fund, you can simply go on the website and you can make a donation to these 5 areas, and you can put your money exactly where you want it to go. But regular giving is really, really what we need. And if any of the classes have any match giving potential, which you may also have to encourage your years to give more, it would be fantastic if at the end of this reunion we had a really high participation rate. We've got about 5% of our total alumni are here this weekend. So imagine what you could all do if you actually took up your suggestions. Thank you.
Just one last thing. I think we also need to do a better job of tracking contributions. I mean, a lot of people give through their national committees because it's more tax efficient in that country, or they volunteer with the national committees. We haven't had data on that either. So when we say the participation rates, you know, sort of 10 to 15%, those are the people who are giving directly to Atlantic College. So I think part of it too is better understanding the nature of giving back within the alumni. But I absolutely agree, it's critically important. The other thing for me, 2 other things. One, we talked to current students about it. You know, when I started UWC, money was a dirty word, and I remember when I took over at UWC Adriatic, I inadvertently almost closed the college because the way the Italians did it, you know, we didn't do our budget until the end of the year, and we made the numbers work. And I wanted to know what I was going into, so I asked for what's called a preventivo budget, like how bad is it? And it turned out we were projecting an €800,000 loss. And because the region guaranteed the viability of the college, effectively the region was going to be on the hook for $800,000, so they couldn't allow me to make offers until I got that number under control, because we were a full scholarship UWC at that point in time. So that sort of put the noose around my neck, but part of it was talking to the students about the financial situation, which is what Steve said. I'm all about that transparency. So students actually, in addition to autonomy, have budgets. So every one of those student committees submits a budget, and they have to stick to their budget. They have to justify their expenditure. Steve is as challenging with them as he has with any budget holder. We used to have 100 budget holders, which of course, when you're trying to control costs, that's very difficult. So we look for ways to consolidate budgets, that sort of thing. And then the fact that all UWCs now do means testing and demonstrate need. Back in the day, you had the pure UWCs, which was Adriatic and Pearson, and that was one of the reasons you couldn't talk about money, because it was a corrupting influence versus a reality of the world. So the fact that now all UWCs are committed to meeting demonstrated need, to doing means testing, is that the conversations are taking place across the movement much more than they used to be. It was almost like a pitch battle before. So really, thank you for those comments.
You made a point, I was going to say that there are many of us who are actually donating to our national communities. Sorry. Many of us are probably donating to our national communities rather than directly to the college. And I think you might want to try and raise data on that, because you might find you have a large base of donators and you just don't know it. And also, I think many of us have come from national communities where you can't actually choose to go to another college. You apply to UWC, then you get sent somewhere and have a great experience. But you have a great sense of loyalty towards UWC movement, maybe even as much or more than to your individual college. I certainly feel that way. And so I might not go and say, if I'm in a position to donate money, okay, let's go back to my college and see which of the funds do I want to pay into. But rather, I give to UWC as a whole, and I do that through my national committee. So it might be worthwhile tracking those ways it moves as well.
Just a comment on that. We're going to the international office to get that data already. So they do a survey in national communities annually, and I asked them to include that question just so we can track whoever that is giving alumni from a fancy college to the national committee, not only giving but also giving their time. We want to track this as well. So we're working with them already on that.
And just the connection to the UWC movement, I think that has grown every year I've been involved in UWC, because the current students are so networked with each other. They remain in touch with their co-years across the movement, which, to be honest, as a head is really intriguing as well, because of course I'm told what's going on at all the other UWCs, and then I have to check whether it's true or not. But it is a much more networked group of students than it was, no offense anyone, back in any of your day, because of social media and everything else. And that also poses a challenge, and when we're talking about well-being, because for most of you, when you came here, this became your new family. Whereas for current students, they remain much more in touch with their family. So homesickness, that inability to break away, the inability to form new friendships with people you are actually living with, but you're Skyping or FaceTiming or whatever with your friends at home. So this is a new challenge within UWC, is how do we deal with a networked world and networked students, and the whole question of the role of social media on UWC campuses, I think, is a fascinating one.
Hi, I'm Jackie from 89, I come from New Zealand, and it's really hard to get back to college when you live in New Zealand. So my question to you, or comment, would be, please find ways to reach out to alumni that don't involve you getting on a great big plane and traveling for 40 hours. Because I want to be connected, and I am with my gear through Facebook, thank God, but I'd like to contribute, but I can't always get here. So if you're doing Friday lectures, can we do some virtual ones? Or I want to be involved, but I can't get here easily. So,
87 to 99. And we are still sort of in the rush hour of our lives, you know, professionally and with children and so on. And I was so excited about the Alumni Project Week. I learned about it 2 months before it took place. It was exactly on the topic I've been working on for the last 15 years. And I really wanted to contribute. And I failed because I couldn't come and I couldn't link in virtually. So please do something about it.
Thank you. And we recognise that this has been a real weakness that we've had at the college for quite a long time. A few things to comment on this. First of all, we have started first webinars that we had with Peter, which we want to do far more regularly. I think it's absolutely right we should have virtual lectures. We should be streaming a lot more of this stuff around the world. So all your co-years who aren't here, we should be streaming this live and we're not. We have had funding in from a UWC Atlantic alum who will support now the funding of a lot more of the infrastructure that we need here, because to be perfectly frank, that's a real area of need. So it's on our radar. We even next year we want to have carbon offsetting program for when you do come to the reunion, that you put money back into the college in terms of tree planting or sustainable projects. So we're onto it, but it's work in progress. So thank you for raising it.
Can I just pick up on the Alumni Project Week, because it's been mentioned a couple of times. This was an idea that actually came out of alumni, as many great ideas do, about wanting to give back their talent. So now that we've replaced the August period with a June period, the idea was that we'd invite alumni for a week around a particular theme to support the development of curriculum and programming in that area and work with our current students. And I absolutely agree, it'd be great if we could have virtual contributions as well, but it was really amazing to see that immediate connection between different generations of alumni, different colleges represented as well. So we had Lustig, we had Atlantic, we had Adriatic, etc., working with our students and how inspired they were by the ideas of the students. So that's a commitment we're making, is that the first week in June every year, we're going to run a project week for alumni to come back onto campus and explore a particular theme. And hopefully the alumni will be contributing ideas for which themes should be explored. But that's one of the efforts we've made to try and engage in a different level. And I think it really gave some great ideas tonight. We've just started about this curation versus mentorship, about how we can manage that space.
So thank you. My name is Charekwa, class of 99 with Valencia. And I want to build on something that you mentioned. I thought for the longest time that the website is inadequate. It feels two-dimensional in the whole world and have a more three-dimensional website. So even, for example, I was trying to find material from the reunion and bookings and all of that. It just felt really sparse. From small things I know, what's the Wi-Fi code, where am I going to be staying? And I feel that there's a lot more capability nowadays to have a more enriched experience. And especially if you're talking about engaging people who are so geographically diffuse. One of the things that I found is I used to get an Atlantic monthly or something like that. You know, I do like 10 times. You're talking about Russia or 4 times. I do 10 times. I don't know if you've got my current address. I also get a Gmail from people's junk mail, and I have to look for it. And when I do find it, it's maybe a bit of snippets about what happened to certain students, and how you did on the London trip, which is all good. So I don't know exactly what kind of website would need to be built, but I think we need something that is more akin to our own Facebook. That's not Facebook. If there are anything from interesting things that people are doing, like I was talking to some of my friends the other time about what I'm doing in Estonia and Canada, what they do in the US as well. And we're trying to stay in touch against the very same things that we came here to say here on TV. Like just like just doing it on your own, but there's other people who are fighting for climate change and so on and so forth. So I don't know what that will physically look like, but whenever I just go to the site, I just kind of feel like, okay, maybe the content hasn't been changed in several months, and I don't know what to do with it. It feels like a lot of platitudes rather than there is someone in Germany working this particular village to do X, and you can message that person and you can share ideas. So I think we need a more not even a three-dimensional, like virtual reality equivalent of what the experience is. So we're not just going to a site where it's like, I know there's interesting people doing interesting things out there, but I don't even know how to connect with them.
Yeah, if I can just briefly answer that. We've got a new head of PR in the college, which is a big investment for us, and a new focus in the way we deal with things. One of the things she's currently implementing in center development, it's quite progressed, is a new website, a completely new website. So hopefully that will be a big step forward in that. And Ellie and her team as well, a completely different focus for the college, realising we need to be more outward focused. We need to engage more with people as opposed to, as you say, being one-dimensional and just put in the bare minimum there. So we need to reach out through our website and through our social media and other means. And hopefully, if Ellie's about, we might get a chance to chat with her later. But there's lots of good things happening in that area.
Who in the room is also interested in following up on that? Because Ellie is here this weekend and you could easily meet with her, and I'm sure she would love to, a couple of you, yes. So if you just meet her afterwards, we can coordinate that. 2 more in there. Come and see me afterwards, and then we'll make sure you can have a chat with Ellie, because I think the more you can participate in that conversation, the better. And on the subject of regular newsletters, Ellie only just joined late last year, and that's something that she's been really focusing on. So we've just started launching things like the Circle and the Edit and things like this that are regular newsletters that go out. When the new website comes up, it'll be a lot more slick and easy to manoeuvre around. At the moment, it's quite slow and painful. We get that. But please talk to Ellie. Come and see me afterwards and we'll organise it.
Yeah, and I think the question of platforms is an important one. I mean, UWC International launched something called the Hub about 3 or 4 years ago. We had AC Connect. Well, those platforms have been merged. So theoretically, it will be a one-stop shop, and that's also in the process of being launched. But I think that's very much the vision of Andrea and Magda in the program. That's Magda's primary responsibility. We'll be trying to better connect and network the alumni so that you can find out who's working in like-minded fields or doing similar work, so that you can make those connections without us necessarily getting involved, just doing the curation or stewardship or whatever you want to call it. So it's the vision to action. We all recognize these as weaknesses, and we are trying to take steps to improve it, but your input would be invaluable versus us imagining what you would want. So that's very helpful.
So I'll project without the microphone. Wonderful to hear all of this, particularly the new programs coming out and things like websites. But I'm a Canadian who went through American University. At the time I left Stanford, I got a book. In that book was information, including contact information of every alum living at Stanford University. And that was a source of incredible power. Because if you were from Stanford University and you called someone in that book, they would answer the phone and they would try and help you. They might open the door, you still have to walk through and do it. That never happened here. Never. And the American universities count on the fact that Americans go to college to have a life-changing experience. The people here have life-changing experiences, and we apologize for coming late. The reason we were late as a group was we were having a memorial service for the members of our class that we lost. If you listen to those stories, you would hear just how much of a life-changing, but in a way we're almost too connected to the people who are in our years, our 2 years, above and below, 3 years. And that was it. We have not using this network effect of the 9,000 alumni and all the people they're connected to. And the other alumni at UWC, we haven't tapped it at all. I'm delighted to hear that we're beginning, and in the 79 year, where many of us are at the stages of our life where we're starting to go past the rush hour and rearrange priorities, and the kids are almost out of the house, and now we have skills. We don't just have aspirations and inspiration, we have skills, and that can be combined in incredible ways, and we started talking about this, but now's the time. Get a database that has contact information. Sure, allow people to opt in. Start with the book, or we have now the technology, but let us be connected vertically as well as horizontally. Sure, the new generation are all connected on Facebook. We didn't have that, but it's there. And the money and the energy come together. If you're connected from the beginning for 50 years worth of people, and then you come and ask for money because all of this stuff is working for you and you're working for them. That's why they have billions of dollars. Right? It's the network. So let's do that. And I'll help.
Johansson from the class of 79. I completely back up around what Michelle just said. And you mentioned that we have 9,000 alumni. Now, the conventional way of thinking says that, well, those are 9,000 donors. But perhaps the not so conventional way of thinking is that those are 9,000 fundraisers or influencers. So we can do a lot more than contributing ourselves, whether it's very small amounts or big amounts. But we have respectively a lot of influence in our respective communities, and we can fundraise, or at least we can try to fundraise wherever we are, in whichever community or job or whatever we have. Perhaps what we need is a toolbook. Ideas. We need ideas. I need ideas to inspire me in terms of what I can do as a fundraiser, as a potential fundraiser. And the wheel has been invented, so there are thousands of colleges around the world, I'm sure, who have good ideas. So a good thing would be for the college to communicate to these 9,000 alumni how they can perhaps raise money by providing ideas apart from being individual donors themselves. That's what I would like to see myself.
Yeah, no, it's music to Andrea's ears, and I think that's one of the reasons that we recruited Andrea and her experience at Howe, because they have been historically much more effective in that sort of thing. And opening doors, I think, is as or more important. Like the UWC International Scholarship line that Steve showed, I think virtually all of those are non-UWC people who are made, that they come to learn about UWC through a contact who told a story or an alum who just inspired them, and then they came to know more and fell in love with what we're trying to do. And I'm not trying to disparage the idea of the big book, but one of our challenges in Europe in particular is GDPR and privacy and the incredible penalties we face if we have any breaches of data. So we have to be quite careful and probably also creative, but literally, it's run by the lawyers to see if we can do that. So we're absolutely committed to better connecting everybody and being better at communicating with you, because we recognize we've taken a lot of that for granted. I think we've been very inward-looking, as Steve implied. Even you go to Calvert's, there's still people who haven't heard of Atlantic College. We have engaged with the Welsh government for decades, and that's what we're doing as well. So I do think these noble networks that we can create would be very powerful.
I think the other thing that we should add to that is that this is a great conversation that we should take back to the UWC International, because we did launch the hub, and it was launched in a very low-key way, there was very little funds behind it, and actually now the two companies have merged. So the company that owned AC Connect and the company that owned UWC Hub have merged, so we stand a much better chance of actually putting something out that is significantly higher quality and calibre that then people would be more interested in joining. And that's part of what we've talked about. But I love the idea of us all being fundraisers and also promoters in terms of seeking young people to join through the national committee structure. And particularly if anyone in the UK is interested in doing that, that's an area of great importance to us. So if there is, then come and see us afterwards.
Can I just make a final comment about your comments? I would love to talk to you further. We're developing a tool as well. So what are we looking for? What are the projects? What are we doing? What's the vision? So you can have the information in the pack. And we're developing that for our governors, but also for other people that would like to spread the word and then engage other potential funders.
And obviously the fundraising does not have to be for scholarships. Not necessary. It could be for a specific project.
Absolutely. Capital projects, sustainability, all the projects, yes. That's it, yeah.
Thank you. Richard Thompson, class of 89. I was very interested to hear about the changes that have occurred over the new management team. Because I have to be honest that 4, 5, 6 years ago I was hearing some very to me, alarming stories about student behaviour, which I think stem from the lack of responsibility they were being given. And I think it's important to acknowledge that those stories that were coming out of Atlantic College were incredibly damaging. And it made me question whether I was wanting to contribute financially or in other ways. It made me question whether my daughters would be interested in attending Atlantic College or maybe another UWC. And I'm somebody who's very passionate about the experience I had here. I worked here as a staff member as well after university. And I just think, so in terms of communication, it's really important to acknowledge there have been problems in the past, but what's being done to tackle those, because it has a massive effect. Even now, I've been talking to people, and people have been very, very worried. An example, the breathalyzer. There was a huge amount of talk on social media a few years about this, and as an educationalist, I was horrified. And I think acknowledging problems that are occurring and how they're being tackled is incredibly important.
If you want to come down with the mic, you've got the second one.
So I can completely empathize with what you're saying. I have 3 kids and I wanted them to experience UWC. And if I'm being honest, it was a very short list of UWCs, even as a head who knew, obviously a lot more than the average parent about what was going on in different campuses. And there were campuses I would not have sent my kids to, and this was one of them. So that was the reality. And I think it's also one of the reasons it's critically important that we move away from the so-called backdoor entry, or even to some extent direct entry, because one of the most powerful things for me about UWC is that the student applies. And it's something the student wants, not something the parents want. And the students go to the selections, not the parents. Whereas when you have direct entry or the back door, whatever we want to call it, it's often the parents driving it. So what you end up with are students who aren't really committed to UWC or UWC Atlantic, but are committed to a lifestyle. And they have lots of money. So one of my messages to parents at the end of this year is, don't give your kids so much money. Restrict how much. Back in the day, like you had college bank, the infamous college bank, it exists still, but the real college bank for most students is a piece of plastic, where they literally have access to incredible wealth. And the other thing for me is we've developed, working with the students, a behavior policy. And for me, the policy is, am I seriously concerned, somewhat concerned, or not really concerned? And so anything that happens, we immediately say high, medium, or low. If it's low, have a chat with your tutor, hopefully you or your husband get it sorted. Medium, someone else is going to be involved in having a conversation with you. High, I'm definitely going to be involved. And also in terms of student behavior and attitudes, we added effort and engagement as an assessment in every subject and every service, activity, etc. So we had 11 measures of that. So it's either exceeding, meeting, or not meeting expectations. If you have 2 or more, I meet with that student. And if that continues into the next reporting period, we're going to be talking about you leaving. And at the end of the year, if it continues, you're gone. So we did dismiss a number of fee-paying students who just weren't with the program. But what is exceptional to me in terms of the progress we've made is 10% of the class exceeded expectations in all 11. 75% of the class exceeded expectations in 8 or more of the 11. So I do think the change is taking place, but I take your point, we're not communicating this. And I do think the reputation of the college in many fora took a beating, over the last decade, and we need to be telling a good news. There's a lot of good news stories, and we need to be doing better at telling those stories and acknowledging the challenges that remain. I wrote a letter to national committees, for those of you who are involved in national committees and parents, in April about my concern about alcohol on campus, and particularly with the end of year coming? And could you have a conversation to reinforce the message that that's not appropriate behavior, to be drinking in that way? So it's obviously not an annual challenge, but I take your point.
Okay, switch to Mitchell.
Hi, my name is Brandon. I'm from 2009, and I'll keep it brief in the interest of time. I'm really enthused to hear about the changes that are being made going forward and how it's being redeveloped. I'm also very focused on action as a UWCer instead of talk, and so I'm wondering what specific metrics you are looking at and should we be looking at as alumni to see what sort of impact these policy proposals and changes are making so that we can feel reassured that the changes are actually happening going forward and we can feel confident again donating directly to the college.
Yeah. Good question. I think, the Harvard survey, one of the attempts is to try and establish those sorts of metrics, but one of the most encouraging for me this year is we asked our psychologists to do an annual report about number of meetings they've had, the issues they've dealt with, waiting time, et cetera, and more students than ever access counseling this year, but a lot of them came through, we run a drop-in service now, like on Thursday evenings. More boys than ever are accessing counseling. No student had to wait more than 24 hours, if they raised a concern and wanted to see a psychologist. Those are huge strides forward. And so we are starting to have reports in the different areas, say English language learning, we do an additional learning needs, so that we have individualized learning plans for students as well. So we're starting to be better at that, but to be honest, it didn't really exist before, that sort of tracking. So it is something that we're slowly implementing in various areas. Obviously, attendance is something that we're taking much more seriously than we were in the past. So now on their reports, their percentage attendance, which it never was before, particularly as well for service and activities, because they're equally valued. So we are slowly building up that data. So